All right. So just first of all, thank you. We are going to be recording this part of the class. So thank you for accepting doing this with me. So just to put it a little bit into context, so that the folks watching this part of the class will understand. This is an exegesis course on the book of Revelation, on the Apocalypse of John. The first half of the class, we went through some of the readings, some of the things with the text. And now in the second part, I'll just present to you a little bit of my research that I did in the last years, and it has to do with Revelation, specifically with Revelation 12, which is our text for today. So before we just move on, and again, we saw some of the interpretations related to Revelation 12 in the readings, and now I'll propose something a little bit different than that. Angelomorphic Christology, this is probably the one term that needs to be explained. This is a little bit of an obscure topic within the study of New Testament and early Christianity. It was there was some things written about it in the 40s in German, and a little bit about it in the 90s, especially here in the US. But basically, it remotes to the idea that in early Christianity, there are texts in which Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the Christian Messiah, is presented either through angelology, Jewish angelology sort of language, or even depictions, portrayals of Jesus that would be very similar to archangels or glorious angels, things like that. And that's part of what I'm doing in Revelation 12. And of course, we can talk a little bit more about it. So basically, I'll just run with you some of the texts, and we'll be seeing some of the things that, again, you already saw in the readings, that Revelation 12 is similar to other stories in antiquity in which a woman is persecuted by a dragon. There's a boy that's supposed to be a king. And part of it is to say that Revelation 12 is inserted in a very specific historical and literary context. And of course, in the end, I'll address a little bit of the idea that Archangel Michael in Revelation 12 has, there's a very strong possibility that he's meant to be represented or understood as Christ himself in the context of the text. So just the three main characters. Again, we've seen this, the woman clothed with the sun, with the moon over her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars, this glorious mother who has the cosmos surrounding her. The second main character, of course, is the dragon. He's fiery, he's red, he has 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns on his head. And then the third one is the male sun. We saw a little bit of that. There's this emphasis that is sun, of course, presupposes a male child, but there's this emphasis that is a male son whose fate is said to shepherd all nations with a rod of iron. And something that we've been doing during the weeks is this idea that John, of course, the prophet from Patmos, he receives this revelation and he is presenting to us this visionary experience. So it's always good to try to imagine with him the pictures that he's seeing, because that's his claim, that something appeared in front of him and he's describing the things that he saw. So I took a little bit of help from AI in the here, because of course I'm not an artist by any means. I liked this one. So you know, just put the biblical texts and some of these AI softwares, and that's what he gave me. So I like this one. It's very shiny. The mother is sort of holding her little baby, so he's already born. I like the perspective from the earth, the moon, sort of she's stepping over it, you know, a crown, many stars. This sort of idea that this woman, this mother, has control over all of these things. The dragon, 7 heads, the crowns, fiery, red, he's angry. Of course, he attempts to eat the male child. before he's born. He's going after the woman. She's screaming in pain because, of course, this is she's in child labor. She's delivering a child, and the last one is the child boy. And you know, I have 3 kids. I have a little bit of a soft spot for children. And so just, you know, again, I just asked AI, it gave me 3 options. It was like, I'll go with all 3 of them. And you can imagine the child boy, whatever way you want, I suppose. And so these are the main characters, right? So let's go back a little bit again to the text. We're going to be reading Revelation 12, and then verse 7 and 8. And if anybody could share with us your translation, if you want to give it a try, that would be nice. So Revelation 12, seeing verses 7 and 8. Yeah, please.
That's right. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but they were defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven.
Can you read the next one?
Yeah, the great dragon was thrown down, that the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go from the Greek, and then let's work through the imagery. Was there, by the most part of it, it's a straightforward text, but were there any difficulties, anything that you thought was a little bit curious in the Greek? Or it was just breeze throughout?
Well, since I translated, in verse 7, the articular infinitive, it looked like it was in the accusative. It looked like it was in the wrong case.
Yeah, it seems like it, because it is precisely that. Yes. So the first clause is just like standard. You know, there was war in heaven. That's it. But then the second one is a bit clunky, isn't it? Michael and his angels. It's all in the nominative, and then it follows by this articular infinitive to polemicide. And if you remember the Greek classes, precisely that's how it's called. The articular infinitive usually takes the accusative, and in this case, it's taking the nominative. So it becomes a little bit of a weird sort of phrasing, but it's, again, nothing new. The Apocalypse of John, we've seen all these weeks, is full of grammatical errors, and this is just another one of them. People have tried to explain it. It's some sort of Hebraism, or there's a verb missing, and it could be, for instance, if you insert like Elton, the aorist for erchomai, it would sort of make sense. Michael and his angels then came in order to make war, or something like that. Came making war, it might work, but again, this is just wishful thinking. We don't actually have the verb. So, but in terms of a sense, we can grasp it. It's just like Michael and the angels making war against the dragon, but it's again, it's not the way that it's supposed to be. But is there anything surprising in terms of the scene, imagining, the dragon, the Michael, and the Archangel Michael, these angels? Any surprises? Anything that you find curious about the image of this vessel? Yes, please.
Just looking at the translation, I think it's particularly unusual to see this description of war in heaven, and not only that, but this explicit violence taking place in heaven. So
yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. And that's a good point, because at least nowadays, if you imagine heaven, especially in popular culture, right? It's with the cartoons or anything, or drawings or anything, or TV movies. It's usually this very cheerful place, the little cherubs playing their harps and things like that. And when you see the description of heaven in some of these ancient texts, like we're seeing here now, the picture is very different. So it's a place in which violence can occur, war, battles, there are revolts. So it seems that it's a much busier place than the ones that people have imagined, especially in the West, I would say. Not only recently, but for a very long time, it's been something like that. But it's but as I said, this image of, and just to recap, we have a woman, she's pregnant, she's being persecuted by a dragon. She has a male son on her belly, she's about to deliver. And then the text says that once the boy is born, he is immediately snatched away, he goes to heaven. And then we see this peace in heaven that we just read, in which there is war in heaven. So this is sort of the scene, right? The woman is fleeing from the dragon, she's screaming, she's in pain, she gives birth to a boy. The future of the boy is established, he's supposed to rule the world with this iron rod, and then the dragon tries to prevent that, and God takes the boy away to heaven, and then we have this image of war. Now, I would like you to, in your handout, there's this passage that we're going to be reading together. It comes from Hyginus Fabulae, the Fables. And here, this piece that we're going to read is a very similar, I would say, description of a battle again and persecution. But it's not, of course, with Michael and Jesus and the boy or anything like that. It's a story that goes back to Apollo. So I was thinking that we might spend just a few minutes reading the story together, and you can perhaps do little groups of 2 or 3. And if you just point out some of the similarities that you see between the accounts, or again, some of the differences that you see, and then we'll come back after that, again, some 5 minutes, and then we can discuss some of compare the 2 stories. Does that sound good? All right. So I put it in the spring, but just so the folks will see later, but then again, you have it in your handout. Thank you.
Okay, let's.
All right, so we resumed recording the class, and so the question is, what have you found? What are some of the similarities? Is there anything similar? The differences? What are some of the things that come to mind when you read the 2 accounts? Yeah.
What struck me was the divine ancestry. I mean, that's definitely hinted at in Revelation 12 with the sun, and then here with it being Jupiter's child. There's this kind of like demigod aspect in both stories.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Yes, please.
I guess another similarity to the text is kind of who the antagonist is, because in this fabulous, it's portrayed as a huge serpent, but then also when we read Revelations 12, it's the great dragon, which is also called the ancient serpent.
Ancient serpent. Yeah, that's true. So both mythological animals are sort of serpent-like. And they're actually, one is a huge serpent, the other one is a big dragon, red dragon, but it's also called the serpent. Yeah, you're right. Yes.
Yeah, along the lines of the enemy, there seems to be a similarity with their motivation as well as kind of their plan. I saw some similarities there. So with Fabulae, the Python knows the hero will kill him. And so then he's going after him because of this. Whereas in Revelations, the dragon knows that the son is going to have this great ruling over all the nations. So.
Yeah. No, that's very, very good. There is a reason why these mythological beasts are persecuting the woman, and they just don't do it for because they're hungry or anything like that. They're like focusing. Apollo would kill Python, and then in the case of the glorious mother of Revelation, the boy is supposed to be a king, and that's why the dragon is persecuting. Absolutely. Any more similarities, differences, perhaps that you're seeing? Yes, please.
Mine is kind of a similarity and a difference
Yes.
at the same time, because you see that the victor, for example, Apollo actually kills the serpent.
Yeah.
But in Revelations 12, the sun doesn't kill the serpent, Michael does.
Yeah.
So, but they're both conquered, but who's
Yeah.
the agent?
Yeah, no, that's very good, and that's sort of my point. As we're gonna see, that's in one, the boy sort of grows up and kills the python. In the case of Apollo, in the case of Revelation, the boy is the one who's being persecuted, but then Michael is the one who kills it. Yeah. Anyone else?
I can
Yes.
point out a difference. It
Please.
does seem that the end of the story with Apollo ends in him establishing funeral games.
Yeah.
I guess it's also a way of explaining the origin story for the
Yeah.
Pythian games, but
Yeah.
we don't really have anything like that occurring.
Yeah, we don't have any Christian games coming coming out of the defeat, you know, of Michael defeating the dragon. Yes, that's one of the differences, and perhaps the biggest difference between them. And there are other things that we could consider. For instance, there's a whole theogony, sort of godly genealogy going on in the case of Apollo. In the case of Revelation, that doesn't occur. There's also the fact that both women, Leto, the mother of Apollo, and the glorious woman, are taken away, right? The gods sort of take them away to a safe place. But by and large, the idea is that these stories are very similar. You know, even if the names are different, they're very similar. And we don't necessarily need to think that John was just looking at Apollo's story, you know, and copying it and just changing the names or things like that. But it's one of those things that if you know the story, it's easier to make something that is similar. And we could see other stories that are very similar. This is not the only one. If you look in the ancient Mediterranean, there are lots of stories that are similar to this, in the sense that a mother is persecuted by some sort of mythological serpent. And in the case of Apollo, though, it makes sense. If you remember, a few weeks ago, we were reading chapter 9. And in chapter 9, if you remember, there was this character, this angel of the pitiless bosom called Apollyon. And back then, we said that there is a very high likelihood that John of Patmos is engaging in some sort of polemics against the cult of Apollo. So if that is the case, Apollo is actually mentioned then in Revelation, and then it makes more plausible that this is indeed reflecting some sort of relationship with the Apollo story. And why is this important? Well, first of all, if that is the case, then John is rendering a Christian version, let's say, or you know, or a Jewish Christian version, or whatever it is, a Christ-following version of this Apollo story. And if you consider also the importance of the cult to Apollo in antiquity, it makes sense that John would specifically target some a very popular god, right? It's not like everybody knew the story of how Apollo defeated Python, the serpent. And geographically, as we read, Delos, the island where Apollo is said to have been born, it's not very far away from Patmos, where John writes this account. It's about 115 kilometers away. And then again, yeah, Delphi, I don't know if you ever had the chance to be there, but it's just to this day a spectacular place. And you know, everybody knew of the oracles coming out of Delphi. Everybody knew about the games. Everybody knew the kings went there in order to worship Apollo and know his oracles, know about the future, things like that. So the likelihood of people knowing the story is very high. And what does it all have to do with the concept of angelomorphic Christ? As we said in the beginning, there is a way in which, if indeed Revelation 12 follows this sort of mythological pattern, this combat myth, Adele Collins would call it, that then it's sort of it is expected that the boy who's being persecuted is the one that grows up and kills the dragon. Otherwise, it sort of defeats the purpose, right? Especially if you consider that this is supposed to rival Apollo. Because Apollo, again, goes up and kills the dragon, kills the serpent. And if Christ, the child boy, is not killing the dragon himself, it seems less appealing, right, than what it is. And so in this sense, it makes sense if we imagine the scene almost like a movie. You see that, okay, the dragon's persecuting not the woman necessarily, but the boy, which is about to be born. As soon as the boy is taken up to heaven, what is it that the dragon does? He goes after him in heaven, exactly. So the boy is really persecuting, the dragon is really persecuting the boy. When the boy is on earth, he goes to earth. When the boy goes up to heaven, he goes to heaven. And then in heaven, there's this big archangel. Now, a nice sort of curious thing is that a lot of accounts tell us that Apollo defeated the serpent python in like 3 days. So he grew up pretty quickly. In 3 days, he was already a hero. And so the idea that the boy is taken up to heaven and then he becomes immediately this general, this great warrior, it doesn't, it's strange perhaps to us, but if you consider this divine realm, it wouldn't be very, very different or very extraordinary, let's say, in antiquity. So you begin to see that there is like a relationship between Michael and the child boy. And we go now to the end of my presentation. Anybody else wanna give a try? We're reading now verses 9, still in chapter 12, but now we're gonna go back we're gonna continue from verse 10, and we can go until verse 12. Anybody's feeling like translating today, sharing your translation?
Then I heard a loud voice in heaven proclaiming, "Now have come the salvation and the power and kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. But they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they didn't cling to life even in the face of death. Rejoice then, you heavens, and those who dwell in them, but woe to the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you with great wrath, because he knows that his time is short."
Thank you for reading that. And if there are any questions, we can talk about this later, but just for the sake of time. So now we have a sort of, after all of these things, once the war is over, there is this scene in which a great voice, probably an angel or the angel choir, as we were saying previously, they come in and they explain the vision, right? And if you ever read any Greek tragedy, sort of the dynamic is that whenever something happens, there is beside the scene a choir, a chorus, that they immediately sort of explain what is going on in the scene. And this is sort of what's happening here. You have the scene, the battle, the boy, the woman, the dragon, the angels battling. Once the scene is over, then the angelic choir comes and they sing about what just happened. And the question that I have for you is, what are some of the things that strike you as important in the way that the angels are now presenting this image of the battle that they just saw? What are some of the things that come to mind? Some interesting features of the hymn. Yes, please.
This focus on salvation and power.
Yes, salvation, power. There's even a little bit more than that, right? It says the kingdom of God. That's a pretty important concept as well, right? The authority of Christ. Absolutely, absolutely. What else is striking? Something that comes to mind?
It's not clear who actually won against the dragon.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
It seems like either the blood or Michael, but it's not as specific who actually conquers them.
Yeah. No, I'm glad to hear that. I'm not imagining that then. It's precisely that. The devil is thrown down. So it's the aftermath of the battle, right? And the angels are praising all of that just happened. They say that the victory comes through the blood of the Lamb. And then a question that comes to mind is, okay, is the victory then the Michael over, the demonic forces, the devil and his angels, or is it the blood of the Lamb? Sort of, which one is it? And then again, I'm proposing that these two relate to the same thing, especially because as was said previously, salvation, power, the kingdom of God, the authority of the Messiah, all of these things within the angelic hymn is subjected to the victory of Michael. So it would be theologically sort of an internal struggle to argue that all of these great things that happen because of this angel who never shows up again in Revelation. It's just like when this one-off thing that happened, and this is the defeat of the dragon. So this is like the important, the center of the book, if you will. It's really when he's defeated. And but then again, if you understand, as I'm proposing, that the Michael, the boy, and now the lamb are just different ways of talking about the same character, then sort of these difficulties sort of are diluted in the sense that, okay, the boy is being persecuted, Michael is the one who does the battle, but then the victory is the lamb. So it's just different ways of talking about the same sort of thing. And again, just one text, one quote that might give us a little bit of more sense of how these things take place is that in antiquity, there's this idea many times that whatever happens in heaven has this synergism with things that are happening on earth. And if you ever had the chance to read the book of Daniel, for instance, there you find an angel who's called the Prince of Greece. And there's another celestial being who's the Prince of Persia. And then there's another one called Michael. And then there's another one who's probably Gabriel, and they are all fighting. And Gabriel is not able to defeat, and then Michael comes and defeats the Prince of Greece, and then he goes on to defeat or to battle the Prince of Persia. So you see that in reality, all of these angels sort of fighting each other really represent these battles that are going on, these wars happening on earth. And I just brought this text as an example from the War Scroll, and it says, peace and blessing for the lot of God, to exalt the authority of Michael among the gods. So this is the celestial, the heavenly perspective, and the dominion of Israel among all flesh. So you can see that in heaven, let's say, Michael is being exalted above all the gods. And then on earth, Israel is being exalted above all flesh, above the nations. So you see that heaven and earth are sort of mirroring each other in this case. And that's what I think is happening in Revelation 12, is that Michael fighting the devil and his angels is a heavenly perspective of something that from an earthly perspective was meant to be understood as the blood of the lamb in this case, which is more than likely a reference to the sacrifice of Jesus, the idea of the cross and the blood and that sort of thing. So again, this is just another way that we could look at the text in which all of these characters go back to the same one. And then just to conclude, some of the advantages of reading the text in such a way is the interpretation of Michael then as one and the same with the boy who's persecuted along with his mother, of course, by the dragon, fits perfectly both with the ancient combat structure that we saw with Apollo, in which the persecuted infant hero is the same one who defeats the monster, and the internal development of the book. It confirms a widespread ancient tradition of depicting heaven and earth in a synergetic relationship, and avoids an internal theological inconsistency in which the salvation, the power, the kingdom of God, and the authority of Christ would be coming to being, would be inaugurated by someone else other than Christ. And I'll stop the recording now, but we'll have a little bit of time to discuss these things after the recording is done. So thank you very much.